Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Legacy, the podcast where we delve into the stories that shape our lives and the lessons we carry forward. I'm your host, Cedric D. Nelson, and I'm excited to embark on this journey of discovery, growth, and inspiration with you. Whether you're seeking motivation, guidance, or simply a moment of reflection, Life, Lessons, and Legacy is here to accompany you on your quest for fulfillment and purpose. So sit back, open your mind, and let's embark on this transformative journey together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Life Lessons and Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Cedric D. Nelson, and today I'm honored to have Miss Teresa English. Miss English, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Cedric. How are you?
I'm doing well. I really appreciate you coming on as a guest. I met you years ago. You know, time goes kind of fast, but met you years ago, and I thought you'd be a great guest for this, for all the different things that you do. I'm looking forward to the listeners finding out about you and the things that are your passions. So I will go ahead and get started. So can you tell me a little about your background, kind of where you're from, and etc.?
Okay. First, just let me say thank you for giving me this opportunity. This is actually my first podcast, so I'm excited.
Okay.
But I met Cedric, as he says, years ago, and I just thought he was just such a wonderful young man. And I'm really, really proud of him with his new book, Life Legacy Lessons and Legacy, as well as the podcast. So I love supporting us and especially young Black men. And I think he's doing an awesome job. So with that, I'll get started. Uh, my name is Laura Teresa English, and I usually go by Teresa. My oldest sister named me, and I'm not real fond of Laura. But I was actually born in Vallejo, California.
Okay.
And my parents both were from Mississippi, which is so ironic. They're on different ends of Mississippi, and they met in California. My
Okay.
dad was in the military. So after staying there years, I have three older siblings. When I was born, well, after I was born, they moved to Memphis. So I'm a Memphis girl, even though I was born in Vallejo.
Mhm.
And one of my dreams is to go back one day and just kind of visit because I was so young when they moved to Memphis. But so I've been in Memphis for most of my life. I am a proud graduate, 1979 graduate of Manassas High School, one of the oldest schools in the city.
Okay.
And after high school, I decided I was going to go to school at University of Pine Bluff in Arkansas and be a opera singer. I love singing.
Okay.
Uh, got to school and got in the music department, and I realized, no, I don't like speaking in front of people. So this is not a good thing for me to be doing. Just kind of did some things. First time away from home, first semester, looked at my grades and said, I think you better go back home because this is not working for you.
Mhm.
And actually came back home and went to Shelby State. At that
Okay.
time, Southwest was Shelby State.
Mhm.
And have always loved working with children. Even in church, somehow I would always end up with the children on the road where their parents were either ushering or in
Mhm.
the choir. So I realized, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. I want to teach,
Mhm.
and did that for a while. I changed my major, and then realized, nah, teaching ain't for me. But I still love helping people,
Mhm.
and I ended up getting an associate's degree in human behavior,
Okay.
and then worked a while and decided, oh, go back to school. Because back then you really didn't need anything but a high school diploma and
Mhm.
maybe 2 years college. You could make a decent living.
Mhm.
And I decided, okay, Lord, what am I supposed to be doing? And I came up with social work.
Okay.
So I went back to school. And at that time, Lemoyne On had a weekend class, an extended program.
Mhm.
So I got married and I went to school at night and on the weekends and finished in about 2 years at Lemoyne
Okay.
and got my BA degree. And then I started working in the social service field. I mean, I have worked at youth villages, and if You are in social work. You have worked at youth villages.
Yes.
Yeah, stayed on. I had a position where I stayed on 3 nights and was at home 4 nights. So I was there with the kids, but I really loved it. And then after leaving youth villages, I actually went to a juvenile facility, Shelby Training Center.
Okay.
And it was a facility for juveniles, not just from Shelby County, but we also had juveniles from California there. And I went in as a what we call them correction officer, residential counselor, whatever you want to call it. And in that field, there were not many women, so there probably were about 3 women. But once I got there, I said, okay, I'm gonna end up being a supervisor because I always set my goals kind of high, and actually got there, and they started building onto the facility. And one of the ladies called and she said, you know, we already have your name down as running the facility. I said, okay, God, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I loved it because in the facility, we actually had a school, we had a culinary class. Our kids really needed that guidance. And so I felt like I was in the right place and stayed there till I had my child. And I said, oh, okay, it's time to go do something else. And so I worked mental health for a long time. I mean, a really long time. I worked with children and I worked with adults. And I really got really disheartened in mental health at that time because so many of our kids were being put on medication that I felt like there were other options for them. But when you work in a mental health center, that wasn't an option.
Right.
And I decided that I could never do anything that I felt like it was against my ethics. So I decided, okay, it's time to get out of here before they fire me. And I had a friend that she called me one day. She said, are you still looking for a job? I said, yeah, yeah. She said, well, I'm at the university. And we just opened up a new program working with families that take care of other relatives' children. And she said, well, it's not paying that much. I said, oh, okay, that's fine. Because it was either going to be dead or I'm going to wait until they tell me you got to go. And I said, okay. She said, but the good thing is if you come, it's a new program. You'll be on the front end of helping to start the program. I said, okay, that sounds good. She said, now pay for college, not just for you, but for your son, a portion. I said, you don't have to say anything else. So she said, well, think about it. I said, I've already thought about it and prayed about it, so I'm good. And that was actually Cedric in 2001. Wow. And it was a program called Shelby County Road to Caregiver program. And it was a program that worked with families who were taking care of other relatives' children. I went in as a family advocate counselor. I was the first one. And I think maybe after we got everybody hired, maybe about 6 months, I got promoted to the lead.
Really?
And I have been there ever since. So that's what I'm doing now. It's my last month and I actually got the job on my son's birthday.
Really?
It was March 7, 2001, and I'm still there.
Wow.
I'm not the lead anymore. I am actually the program administrator. So I'm running the program. And it has truly been a blessing. And I said all of that to say it helped me. People say you can't make money in social work. That's not true.
It's
not. You gotta love it, and I love what I do. And then you find ways, and God just happened to open up doors for me that I never thought that He would or I could do. Here I am, the baby of 5. It's 5 of us, 6 of us. No, it's 5 of us. It's 3 girls and 2 boys.
Okay.
Parents from Mississippi and never finished school. Neither one of them, but they provided. I always say I had the best parents in the world. My mom and dad. My mom actually owned a salon. My dad worked for MLG&W, but neither one of them finished high school.
Wow.
So I was actually the first a college graduate
Mm-hmm.
of my not the smartest of my siblings. Now, let me get that clear.
So, but you
But
graduated first.
I wasn't the smartest, but
Mm-hmm.
I was blessed to get my degree
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to pass that on to my son as well. So
Yes.
I mean I credit my parents in my their faith in God and bringing us up in a house where there was strict upbringing. Uh, but I appreciate it now that
Mm-hmm.
I am in the place that I know I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that where I am now in my career, in my personal life, uh, in my finances is
Mm-hmm.
where I'm supposed to be. And it only gets better.
Yes, ma'am. You know,
It
Miss
only gets better.
Miss English, you know, you said some very important things. And one of the things we was talking about, I tell people in social work and fields where you're dealing with people. You know, people always say, well,
Mm-hmm.
you can't make any money doing it, but you can. Because I
Mm-hmm.
tell people, if you're doing God's work, God will take care of you
That's it.
in ways you can't even imagine. Like you say, people, oh, well, you're in social work, can't make any money. Well, I'm listening to God. I'm gonna help people. That's what God put in my heart. So I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
this work. And I will be paid tenfold, as they say. And
That's it.
what you do is amazing because you know, I told you my story, you know, my mom being murdered and my grandmother raising me, you know, when you and I were talking
Mm-hmm.
before the speaking engagement. And it was just amazing seeing that many people that were in those same roles and speaking to those children like, hey, look, I was you guys. We were basically the same, you know, and these people are pouring into you and they're taking care of you and just appreciate and telling my story, you know, about my grandmother and like you said, about
Right.
parents just pouring into you. And you never know whose life you're impacting and how that impact may impact the next generation's life. So I think what you do is amazing. The program was amazing, everything was top notch. And the children and the caregivers seem very, very invested in the process. So it was great.
They are and when I I have to say this, and I'm quoting my pastor. My pastor is Pastor Darrell Shack at
Okay.
Greater New Liberty. He always says once he counsels with God, he doesn't need anybody else confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
He counsels with man no more.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, being in the place that I'm at, am I in the right place, Lord? Am I doing the right
Mm-hmm.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because people would tell you, well, you know, you're not going to make any money
Right.
there. I actually had someone to say, well, why don't you just go into nursing? I said, no, I don't want to be a nurse. Plus, I
Right.
don't like needles. But it's good money. You don't have to actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, you contemplate that when you're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about trying to make money and be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Had I done that, that would have been the thing that I was not supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think I would have made the money. But when I decided, because we both were in school, and I said, no, I'm going to go with what I prayed about and what I know
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to be doing. And I promise you, I tell people, have I struggled? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But have I had everything that I want when I asked God for it?
Mm-hmm.
I got everything I want. I have everything I want. And when I don't get it, in most cases, because I haven't done what God has either told me to do,
Mm-hmm.
or either I've been a poor steward over some of the things, or it just wasn't that time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't time.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'm like, okay, do I really need that? Well, no, not really, not right now.
Mm-hmm. God's time.
So the word says that uh if you delight yourself in him, then he'll give you the desires of your heart.
That's
When
it.
I go even further, he gives you the things that you can't even imagine that you
Mm-hmm.
want. There's
Mm-hmm.
some things that I have, and I'm like, I never thought I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I have it, I'm like, okay, Lord, I hear you.
I appreciate
And
it.
I received that and I appreciate it. So
Mm-hmm.
I want young people to know that this is a honorable field.
Mm-hmm.
It's a field that, because I think I know all of us have a purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to figure out what that purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I feel like all of our jobs is we're here to help somebody else.
Yes, sir.
We-
Yes,
We're
sir.
we're all servants in whatever form that you are in. And I tell people at this point, when I'm thinking about retiring,
Mm-hmm.
I see that my job now, especially with our generation now, that we are those elders. We are the elders now.
Yes. Yes,
I
indeed.
never thought I'd say that, but I'm 62 and I'm like, okay, I am that person I used to see that would say, hey girl, pull
Mm-hmm.
that dress now. Those
Mm-hmm.
older women, or
Mm-hmm.
do your mom and daddy know you out here? So those women that looked out for the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, that's me. That's what we are supposed to be doing
Mm-hmm.
now. And we have to accept that task and be willing to do what our part, because it's all about mentoring and giving back. And because when we see the news every day
Every
and we
day.
can blame whomever,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it falls on us as
It
parents,
does.
on us as family members, because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times we say we don't want to get involved. At the end of the day, we can either get involved now or later.
That's it. And the elders, I tell people growing up, when I was growing up, I grew up with my grandmother. So elders were a big thing for us. You couldn't disrespect
Right.
your elders. Your elders could correct you if they saw you doing wrong. And I tell people all the time, some of those kids, when I was growing up, you may be the only person important to that kid for today. You may be the only person to say, hey, you can do X, Y, and Z. Hey, how's your day going? Hey, what do you need? And you don't realize how much that means to a child who is lacking that in their home environment or maybe at school. So, like you say, we have to be mentors. We have to give these kids programs. We have to give them guidance. Because some of them push against it, but you realize most of them really want it. It's like you said about your parents. Most kids who have very strict parents, they think they don't want it until they get
Mm-hmm.
older and they realize, like,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate my parents giving me a curfew or wondering where I am or telling me I can't do this and can't do that. You don't realize until you get older and realize, okay, the people that didn't have this, their life may have turned out differently than yours. So,
Right, right. And I go back and I talk about my childhood a lot, because were it not for that,
mm-hmm,
I would not be.
mm-hmm,
My siblings would not be. And my dad always said one of his proudest moments, I used to love to hear him say, he said, I've never had to go to the jailhouse and get any of my kids.
that's it.
And that may not mean a whole lot to
Mm-hmm,
other people, but back then, coming up doing segregation,
mm-hmm,
and he did, and he was so proud of it. Like,
mm-hmm,
all my kids finished high school.
mm-hmm.
I never had to go to the jailhouse, and we always knew if we got in trouble, we wasn't calling him anyway. But and there's something to be proud of.
It is.
And you think back now, I look at how hard they worked, how hard my grandparents on my mom's side never even had running water in them.
Wow.
And you look at two generations
Mm-hmm.
after them, that they would look back and say, okay, it was all worth it.
That's it.
Some of them knew that they would never see the fruits of their labor, but they
Mm-hmm.
knew their children would.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that their grandchildren. My grandmother had look, she still had chickens. She never owned the land,
Mm-hmm.
but even her communication with other races was just so. You think back now, they
Mm-hmm.
went through a lot. They went through
Mm-hmm.
a lot. They didn't have running water. She didn't have a toilet inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I feel like they will be very proud in some
Mm-hmm.
aspects and very disappointed in a lot, because a lot of things I think we truly forgotten the struggle and what it took to get us here. And
Mm-hmm.
I think some of us think we've made it and we have not,
And we
because
have
we're
not.
regressing.
Mm-hmm. You
We're
see,
regressing.
right. And like you said, it's important because I talk in my book, and one of my questions we'll get to later on is about legacy. And I talk about that, like real parents, grandparents, they want you to do that. They want their next generation to do better than they do. I struggle now so my kids can have a better life later on. And like you
Right,
said, we take it's like voting. Like people say, oh, I'm not gonna go vote. No, you need to go vote. Somebody
right,
died so that you can go vote.
right.
Like they died, never got a chance to vote, never got a chance to own anything so that you could. And like you said, I think we're regressing because the family dynamics are changing. People are really not parenting anymore. No one's
Mm-mm.
holding anybody accountable, and no one's passing on knowledge. It does no good for me to gain all this knowledge and not share it with my children, because every generation is
Exactly.
supposed to get better. You know, so I don't know, when you think about legacy, even our ancestors who died before us, think about how proud they would be of the life that you've created, the life I'm creating. And like you said, some points they would be, disappointed in different parts of the family because, like you say, we're regressing. But just the fact that you and I are able to sit on this podcast and talk about having great parents and having success, it's amazing. The generations before us didn't even have this opportunity. Like I say, you had a hard time even being to have a word with someone about your property or whatever it may be. So I don't know what I think. That's why I think what you do with the program is so important, because you are taking elders and family members who want to be involved and letting them pour into those children. So those children in turn will do the same thing with their children. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And the thing for me is, I think it all starts in the family. We can, even though we had a what we call a real village, the village looks totally different now.
It does.
And so you are very apprehensive about letting people pour into your children, because people have all kinds of different values.
Yes.
But when we grew up in our communities, everybody knew everybody, and even those the ones that were struggling with issues, you knew them, and you still were there to help them, not to condemn them. I think a lot of times people have gotten us to believe that we don't need to talk about those things. But other races still talk about their struggles.
Yes.
And even in the Bible, when they went through things, God would tell them, don't forget where you come from, basically. And my son used to wonder why I made him sit down and watch historical pictures and movies like Roots or the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, or yeah, you're going to see your grandparents. We're gonna go down there, because I need you to understand where we came from, what it took, and what it could look like if we ever forget. You still hear Jewish people talk about the Holocaust. They don't let their people forget that. They don't let their children, because that's their legacy.
It is.
And I've always wanted. I have and I failed to say I am married. And I have two sons, one I birthed and one through marriage, and two daughters, and multiplicity of grandchildren and great grandchildren.
Okay.
So but I want to be able to pass that on to him and my kids and my grandkids, that you cannot ever forget the struggles. And that family is so important for me. And people ask me what was the most fondest memory growing up for me, was my dad got off at MLG&W at 4 o'clock. Around 4:30, 5 o'clock, we were sitting at the dinner table. I promise you, we were sitting there, and we would sit there. I didn't know then how smart they were. Our parents were they weren't as educated, and they had a degree, but they knew exactly what they were doing. We had to be at that table, and we would be at that table sometimes 2 to 3 hours laughing and talking. But what they were doing was communicating with us, seeing how our day was, understanding who we were, and what was going in our lives. We were telling them without even telling them.
Just talking.
Just talking. And so for me, I made that a tradition. I still have Sunday dinner with my son, and he's 31. He comes over here on Sunday, and that's our time to talk, because everybody's so busy. So you made time for that afternoon dinner. And that's one of the things that I stress to our caregivers. A lot of times with our families, we are able to buy them items like beds. But one of my pet peeves is, do y'all have a dinner table?
That's it.
And so I'm really adamant, if they don't have a table, I'm all for, hey, we can purchase that, because that's the time you need to sit, talk with your kids. You can pray at that table, you can do your homework at that table. That's where you can have your family meeting. That table is a gathering place.
It is.
For your family.
It is. I told somebody the same thing with my family, saying, because we have cell phones now, so everyone wants to be on a cell phone. I'm like, look, here's this basket or whatever. Put your phone up. You're gonna talk to. You're gonna sit here long enough. You sit here for a few minutes, you'll start talking, because you don't have your cell phone to mess with.
Exactly.
And like you said, that's where those family bonds come from. Because once kids sit down like you say, they don't know they're telling their business. They just sit down and start talking. And then
Exactly.
you know what's going on with, and like you say, it's just that bond, because family, I tell my kids, it's just me, my wife, and my two kids. Now we've created family through via friends and relationships here, but it's just
Right.
us as far as a family. So we are all we have. We have to keep that bond. We have to talk. We have to discuss issues. We can't sweep it under the rug. We have to actually have that bonding time. And I told that's why it's so important. Like you said, there's people who, like you say, don't have a dining table that they can go to and sit down, or don't have meals together. I'm like, that's very
Right.
important. So I love the tradition that you have with your son. And I'm sure at this point he doesn't even fight you about it. It's like, you know what? It's Sunday. Let me go on over here.
And he doesn't, and the thing is, well, all our kids, when they come here, this is home. They're able to talk to me and my husband. This is my second marriage, so I had to learn how to co-parent. And I tell people, I never used the word single mom because I wasn't a single mom. His dad was in his life. We were married. Our issues were not his issues.
Right.
I had to learn that early. And I didn't want my child to be one of those angry black men that talked about his dad, because I had a wonderful father. And even though he had his grandfather and his uncle, he still had his dad and he loved him dearly. And I learned that early because I tried to say something about it one day. And he was like, Mom, don't say that about my dad.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, he's right. Because sometimes we have to listen. So
We do.
we've got to stop beating each other up. And when we make adult decisions as men and women, realize that we bring children into this world, and our views about their parents is what we feed them. What we feed them.
Yep.
So I didn't want, people say, well, I would tell him, why would he need to know that? No. I want him to love his dad. I said, you know how many of our kids can tell you they don't even know their father? The father's not in their life. I said, a lot of our issues now with our kids is because of this. It's because they don't have male role models. Or now it's not just the fathers, they don't even know their moms now.
Exactly.
So we're looking at it into, and that's one of the things we tell our caregivers. Even though you're raising the children, don't ever say anything negative.
That's it.
About their parents.
It's still their parent.
They're still their parents. And at the end of the day, you want them to love their parents. You don't, it's wonderful that you stepped in, but you will never be their parent.
Exactly.
And to say negative things about them, that gives kids all kind of questions and and sometimes kids will resent you for that.
They will, even if you provided for them, because
exactly.
I tell people all the time, when you have kids, your life isn't about you anymore. I mean, you still want to live life, but it's really not about you. It's about you raising your child. You doing what's best for your child. Like you say, even though I may have a problem with this person, if that's their parent, I don't need to express it to this child. This is still a child, and they're gonna love it. I know, working at youth villages, you and I both did. Some of those children had some extreme issues with their parents, with abandonment, with stuff you can't even imagine. But when it came time for a family visit or a phone call, if that kid did not get that phone call or that family visit got canceled, you had problems in your hand that day.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're still their parent.
Yes.
You know.
And it's just, when you are in this field of helping, we're here to give people hope. So there's always a hope that your parents will get themselves together. But just in case they don't, you got this relative, this grandmother, this uncle, this aunt, this church member, whomever, that's there to support you. And we want you to make sure that you do the best that you can. Because we want to change some things in our community. And I don't say curse, I just say bad habits. We have a lot of bad habits that we continue to do because, one, we don't want to address it as a habit. And I tell the caregivers a lot of times, and I tell people, when you start talking about a child's parent, that does something to them. When we tell them their parents should be the person that they love and they respect, but then you, on the other hand, telling them something different. So who do they listen to?
Correct.
and you kind of put children in a very bad position to
Mm-hmm.
almost make choices.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe what you say and respect and honor?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not always 10. You're gonna grow up. You're gonna have your
Exactly.
own kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you change that to that view of your parent?
Mm-hmm.
And usually, and I tell people when I used to work in rehab, nobody wants to be a drug addict.
Right.
Uh well, they just can't stop. It's the reason why they can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about that?
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to be in a facility where they can't see their children, or who wants to live on the street? Homeless people don't want to be in the street.
Exactly.
Poor
Exactly.
people don't want to be poor.
They don't.
But if that's all they know,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't show them anything different, then guess what? In most likely, that's what they're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. Like I tell people all the time, I said, that's why I started the podcast. I said, everyone is living life, learning lessons, and leaving a legacy. Even the drug addict, the person that is strung out on alcohol, drugs, whatever, this person, they have lived life long enough to tell you some lessons, to give you some life
Exactly.
lessons. And they don't want their legacy to be, oh, I was on drugs, alcohol my whole life, and I couldn't get my life together. I tell people the crackhead has a story to tell, just
Thank
like the
you.
politician has a story to tell. They both are
Exactly.
living life. They are both figuring it out. I tell kids all the time, I say, even with your parents, we're just imperfect people that happen to have somebody we think can really
Yes.
that we think is perfect.
Yes.
We're just doing our best. There's no playbook to life. And I will say this: I tell my kids, I was telling them just the other day, Miss English. I said, a lot of times in life we make it harder ourselves because God gave us a Bible. He gave us the word.
Right.
It's just we
Exactly.
don't want to follow the Ten Commandments. We don't,
Exactly.
but I say, but everyone falls short, and that's part of when they talk about, we all fall short of His glory, oftentimes. And I tell, so don't be so judgmental. Even if you are, again, if you are the caregiver, I know, like again, my grandmother raised me, and the whole situation with my father was very different. But I say this crazy thing: my grandmother never talked bad about my father. When he did
There
come
you
to
go.
visit me, he would knock on the door, run back to the curb, and, hey, can I see my son? Now, this man had murdered her daughter while she held me. And my
Mm-hmm.
grandmother was still like, well, baby, that's still your father.
That's it.
And it was, and now looking as a kid, you're like, huh? But now I'm older, I realize how huge that was. Because I don't even know if I
Right.
have it in me, Miss English. If someone did something to my daughter, so I don't know if I would have it in my heart enough to let that person come to my house without me ending up in jail, to be honest. So
Exactly.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
huge. So I
And
don't
that's
know.
where your faith kicks in, and that's where God shows us grace
Mm-hmm.
and mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And if we say we want to be like Him, then
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that we have to do. We have to forgive. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's more about forgiving ourselves.
It is.
And you're right, as parents, my son and I just had this conversation. Uh, we were my parents had been doing a parenting classes,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about spankings and whooping.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Mama, you whooped me a lot." I said, "Well, I don't remember that." And he
Mm-hmm.
said, "You did." I said, "Well, I will say this." I said, "A lot of things that I probably spanked you about, now that I know
Mm-hmm.
better and know some things, I would have handled it a
Mm-hmm.
lot different." I
Mm-hmm.
said, and I had to start looking at. I love this lady, Dr. Joyce DeGruy. She
Okay.
does post traumatic slave syndrome,
Okay.
and I say everyone needs to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But what she talks about is where that whooping people actually came from.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked about how on the slave plantation, uh, master would whoop a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of time parents, if there were their child, they would say, "Oh, let me whoop him because he's no good and
Mm.
he's shiftless and
Mm-hmm.
he's this." And it sounds like that they're demeaning that child.
Mm-hmm.
But what she says, what they had to learn how to do that, because if they made him look like, or her look like, she was special, then
Mm-hmm.
that's somebody that may ended up in master's bed or
Mm-hmm.
sold off because he's uppity. So you
Mm-hmm.
learn how to do that. They did it to save their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
if you remember, if you looked at Roots, how when they were trying to get Kunta to say his name,
Mm-hmm.
and what was Ben? he just died.
Uh, uh,
I can't even think
Lou
of his
Gossett
name.
Jr.
Louis
Mhm,
Gossett said, "Let
mhm,
me whoop him," because
mhm,
he knew when he whooped him, it was gonna be out of love, and
mhm,
he was gonna do it and make it look like it was hurting him,
mhm,
but not as hard as the mess. So she said, a lot of
mhm,
times we whooped our kids because we felt like that's what we need to do to keep them from getting in trouble.
mhm.
And we heard it all the time. I'm gonna whoop you before the police get you.
That's
I've
it.
said it too.
Because they might kill you.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they might. So
Mhm,
I'm trying to save your life. So a lot of times, a lot of things that we did were birthed out of slavery,
mhm,
actually to
mhm,
cover us, to make sure we would be okay.
mhm,
And she gives this scenario about two women, a white lady and a black lady that are sitting in the waiting room, and I'm just paraphrasing. They
mhm,
had two sons, and she says how the white lady says, "Oh, how the black lady tells her, oh, your son is just so smart. He's just so this." And they're at an award ceremony or something like that.
mhm,
And then she turns around and tell her, "Oh, but your son is doing, oh, that's nothing. Oh, he's no downplaying it
mhm,
because that memory of I better not say anything that
mhm,
makes him look better than her son."
mhm,
And it's not even about him being better. It's just that we've been taught from history. If we make ourselves look good,
mhm,
then maybe that's a negative on our end.
mhm,
And we'll say it still. We got to work twice as hard.
mhm, mhm.
And so we still, I think if we understood our history and understood a lot of things and why we did it.
Mhm. Ms. Hayes, what you said is very important. And it goes back to you talking about knowing the history. Because if you don't know, a lot of times we do stuff we don't know why we did.
We
You,
don't.
you just know, okay, this it's
We
always been
don't.
this way. I've always done this. I've always done that. And you don't even know where it came from. Again, like I say, if you don't explore history, if you don't learn history, don't take time to kind of gain knowledge, then you don't even know. Again, you end up, I don't know, I've done this my whole life. I don't even know why. But
Exactly.
it comes from somewhere, and usually it's passed down. It's like I remember in I think second grade, and the teacher asked me to tell a story about my favorite person. And at the time, it was my aunt Dorothy. My aunt Dorothy grew up. She was almost like she was my aunt, but she was more like my big sister and my mother figure outside of my
Mm-hmm.
grandmother. So I called. I said my auntie, my
Mm-hmm.
auntie, and she stopped me and she was like, "Yo, what?" I said my auntie, and she, again, I'm second grade, so I don't even know. It's not auntie, it's aunt. And
Right.
she went off on me, and it's not auntie. She was like, spell it. And I'm in second grade. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But it's the thing of, again, everyone in my family said auntie,
Right.
but it was actually aunt. But I didn't know where it came from. Even when she was chastising me in front of the class, I even when she was trying to correct me, I still had no clue what this lady was talking about. She wrote it out on the
Right.
board and she said it's aunt, not auntie. So I went home and told my aunt, or my auntie at the time, and she came back to school the next day. Like, let me talk to you for a minute. And even then, the exchange they had, I didn't even understand why it was important for her to say, look, don't belittle him. He doesn't know. He's just a child.
Right.
But again,
Right.
we say and do stuff just because that's what we've learned growing up. We don't know any different.
Exactly.
I tell people growing up, there were no doctors, lawyers, politicians. There were those type of people were not in my community. I
Right.
had I had to do the sold drugs, had the person who sold bootleg this, bootleg that. The most, I guess, lucrative job that was upstanding was the person that worked for the city, or they may have did
Mm-hmm.
trash services or something.
Right.
And even those people, they poured into me. I think once they realized that I got to the age where I wanted, I stopped having a horrible temper, and kind of my grandmother sat me down and said, "Hey, baby, look, I love you. You're a young black man. You're amazing. But if you keep going the route you're going, you're going to end up in jail. You don't want to be like your father,
Right.
And I'm like, yes, ma'am. And somehow it flipped that switch for me. But those people in my community poured into me. If they saw me out, they would give me money. They would talk to me. If I was around some kids that did stuff that I don't do, they didn't have any problem pulling me to the side, like, hey, look, that's not you. I don't know where he's going, but you're going somewhere different. So I tell people, even though, and sometimes in our communities, we don't have doctors, lawyers, politicians, people that nature, business owners in our community, the people that are there, once they realize that you're trying to do something different in your life, they'll see something special in you and they'll start pouring into you. And that's why I think, well, with your program, And just talking about kids, if I tell the kids all the time, if you will just show them that you're trying to do something positive, the positive people in your environment will protect you. They will help to
That's
guide
it.
you, because they see something to you that maybe they want to achieve and they couldn't. So now they have a chance for you to achieve it, and they'll pour into you, So I don't know. I just try to tell kids there's so many life lessons out here. If you just do your part, God will take care of the rest. He'll give you a village. Just do your
He
part.
will. He will, and you're absolutely right, because one of my favorite stories when I worked at the juvenile facility, and each unit had 25 boys, and some of those boys were in there for murder.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't know it in the community,
Uh-huh.
but those kids needed nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
and I was that nurturer.
Okay.
Even though I was the supervisor and I in uniform on,
Mm-hmm.
I was that nurturer. And my mom was so afraid when I started working. I said, "Mom, I'm gonna be fine." I would be in the unit with 25 boys with not a pepper spray, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When I tell you, when something would, as the kids say, pop off, they would tell me, "You need to go in the back."
That's it.
They
Mm-hmm.
covered me.
Mm-hmm.
They protected me because they knew I had them. I was gonna
Mm-hmm.
go to bat for them.
Mm-hmm.
I was going, and even if I had to go to bed with a staff that was out of order, like
Mm-hmm.
no, and don't ever put me in that position.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about these kids,
Mm-hmm.
because you're gonna see these kids on the street. And I actually did one day going to Lemoyne.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, had to park in the back, and one of the young men came and he said, "I know you." I said, "Yeah." He
Mm-hmm.
said, "We got you. We got your car."
See?
We
Mm-hmm.
parked. Never had any problem. People said, "Oh, they bribe." I said, "I know it's favor." I said, "But I don't worry about walking." Because I said, "Because these kids know me."
Mm-hmm.
And even as a search worker, I had South Memphis. I wasn't afraid to go. They saw me. They knew me. They knew I wasn't there to do anything wrong. They
Mm-hmm.
got me.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom helped me with that because she had a beauty shop
Mm-hmm.
in North Memphis.
Okay.
And there was a corner store and the guys there on the corner. And she told me to go to the store one day. And I was like, "Oh, mama, I don't want to go to the store. They all on the corner." She said, "One, they know me. They
Mm-hmm.
know your dad." And my
Mm-hmm.
mama carried a pistol. And she stuck her head out the door and said,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, this is my daughter." And from that point on, they be like, "Okay, that's Miss Pauline, baby.
Mm-hmm.
You good, baby? Gone in the
That's
store."
it.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have that in our communities anymore.
We don't. We don't. From the time I left the house to the store to the gym to back, there was always somebody out there watching me. They sit on the
Yes,
front porch. I might be going to the store. Hey, babe, I'm gonna give you extra $2. Get me something on the way back.
yes,
And you just did it. And again, I tell people about the respect factor. Kids now will just, be outside just cursing and whatever. Back then, if you knew a kid that did curse, when an adult came by, they were on
absolutely,
their P's and Q's. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Now they might
absolutely,
go around the corner and curse everybody out,
yes,
but it was just that respect factor. And I think a lot of times now we've kind of gotten so far away from it. And like you say, it's kind of hard to pour into someone because you don't even know what you're going to deal with when you do go meet their parent or you meet their caregiver. That
exactly,
it's not the same as you and I growing up. My kids, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, and people kind of look at them funny sometimes, like, why are you saying that? And I'm saying it's not that you're inferior to me or anything. It's just a sign of respect. People that are older than me, and I'm grown, I still say yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir.
yes,
And it's not that I'm beneath them. It's just a sign of, look, I respect you. You're my elder. It's like talking to someone older. I have older uncles and aunts. And when I go have a chance to talk to them, I sit down and talk to them because I'm like, they've been here longer than I have. So they got to have more
right,
knowledge. They've learned something they could tell me so that I could avoid these headaches. It's kind of like you were talking about, like, your parents, being so intelligent, not necessarily going to school to get education. But if you live life long enough, well, again, about this podcast, if you live life long enough, you're gonna learn some lessons that you can share with somebody.
exactly,
So it takes a village. And like I said, the village is kind of broken down now. And that's one reason, again, for the podcast, so
yeah.
people could listen and kind of get some of this knowledge because some people don't have anyone pouring into them.
They don't. And that's why I think what you're doing is so wonderful, because now they're not going to pick up a book
Mm-hmm.
in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
which I think is something that we're really hurting our kids at. And I,
Yeah.
I appreciate social media
Mhm.
in its place, but those natural skills, the creativity, the
Mhm.
reading, the picking up a book, I just feel like medically, cognitively,
Mhm.
we're gonna see some things that don't look good because we're not using those skills as they get older.
Mhm.
And but what you do is you know that they're on social media, you know that they're on
Mhm.
YouTube. So they may glance by it or somebody may hear it or put it on
Mhm.
their Facebook or on their Instagram
Mhm.
and say, hey, listen to this. So
Mhm.
we gotta meet them where they are, you
Exactly.
know. And we're
Exactly.
probably never going back to the point that we're not gonna have social media. That's just
Exactly.
it.
It's here.
This is where we're at now.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we also got to teach them some of those other skills, some of those
Mhm.
coping skills, some
Yes.
of those what we used to call mother wit, so that
Mhm.
when you don't have these things, you won't break, that you
Exactly.
will still know how to survive. Things like gardening,
Mhm.
it's not a lost art. Those are things that we need to teach our children
Mhm.
about. Or if we don't, the way the world is going, we don't know what might happen next.
We don't.
We never thought we'd be in the house for 3 years
Exactly. Trying to figure it
in
out.
our lifetime,
Mhm.
you know. But we also know that I tell people God sustained us because people started businesses. We had to be creative.
Mhm.
I used to sell paparazzi. I tell people I made so much money selling paparazzi during the pandemic. When it
Mhm.
was over with, I'm like, "Oh Lord, you did this." You
Mhm.
know, uh, my husband and I were like, we bought a house during the pandemic. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
look at God.
That's
I
God.
said, I said, that's nothing but God. I
Mhm.
said, but at the end of the day, now we're coming out of it. I said, y'all, we got to figure out where do we go
Mhm.
from here?
Mhm. Because it's
Because that
different.
can happen again.
It could. And like you say, you have to be able to sustain. I tell people, especially as a guy being a father and a husband, like, and my wife is responsible for stuff as well. But I was like, okay, I need to make sure my family's okay. So I
Right.
need to be able to garden. I need to be able to protect my family. I need to be able to provide. No matter if the world shuts down or not, I still need to
Eh,
be able to
That's
provide.
it.
And like you
That's
say,
it.
those skills like gardening and just interpersonal skills, knowing how to talk to people goes a long way. Because a lot of people nowadays don't necessarily know how to even hold a conversation. My wife and I went one night, we went out somewhere to eat. And it was funny. We sat there and the couple never looked up at each other, never talked to each other. They ate,
Yes.
and the whole time they were both on their phones,
Yes.
laughing at the phone, not the person that was there. The check came, they got it, they paid for it, and they left. And I was like, the communication skills are almost lost art these days with this generation because everything is,
It is.
it's let me text, let me send you a message. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Life Lessons and Legacy. I hope you found our discussion thought provoking and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps us to improve and reach more listeners like you. Remember, life is a journey of growth and discovery, and every experience, both the highs and the lows, contributes to the legacy we leave behind. So embrace each moment, cherish the lessons, and live with purpose. You can find more resources, including my book, Life Lessons and Legacy: How to Take Life's Lessons and Shape Your Legacy. Available for purchase on my website at www.lifelessonsandlegacy.com. Also available on Amazon.com. On my website, you'll also discover information about my life coaching services and speaking engagements designed to help you unlock your full potential and live a life full of purpose. I'm Cedric D. Nelson. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.